I'll give you all of my love. Believe me, you won't forget it. You.
What's up, guys? I'm back and doing another one of those streamy thingies. Where should I begin? All right, maybe I'll begin by turning down the music just a little bit. Anyway, yeah, so I'm back. I'm doing a stream. I'm going to be talking about spreadsheets a lot. I want to say a hello and welcome to some folks in my Facebook group. I've been chatting with a few people online. We got like a private little Facebook group, and this is a public YouTube video, but I do want to address them personally. This is kind of my way of getting to introduce a little bit of what I do with spreadsheets. As I understand it, some folks in the group are really knowledgeable with spreadsheets, and others maybe not so much. I think there's kind of a wide spectrum of kind of skill levels. The ultimate goal of introducing this stuff to the group is really just trying to get a dialogue going. You might notice that chat and comments on the YouTube page are disabled, but in the Facebook community, the Facebook group, it's the other extreme. It's encouraged that we comment and so forth. So I'd love to hear from some of the members of the Facebook group. You can tell me what you think of what I've done. I'd love to hear that. But I'm also really encouraging new stuff, right? So if you've seen me do something in this video and it sparks some ideas about something that you're doing, I'd love to hear that. So, I mean, just for example, I know one person is getting training in tax preparation, and I did tax preparation a few years ago. Spoiler alert, I hated it. There's a lot of factors, and I won't get into all of them, but I wanted to get over my anxiety about doing taxes by taking that job. Like, I thought that the training and all the support and everything, I just thought that, like, oh, this would be a good way for me to get over my anxiety about tax preparation. And it was just the opposite. Like, that job that I had was just ridiculous. Anyway, yeah. I don't know if there's some possibility for spreadsheets. Personally, when I worked there, we had proprietary software, and we never needed to use spreadsheets over there. But maybe you decide to do some extra credit on your own time, doing your own 1040 worksheet or something, and you want to keep track of some expenses, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The point being is that I'm not trying, how do I say this? Like, surely I would love some feedback about exactly what I do. But I also would love to see new conversations get started, like shoot off from this. So I'm telling you right here, right now, go for it. If you got some ideas, go for it. I may or may not have the resources to put into a side project. As it stands right now, I barely have time to do a fraction of the things I want to do right now. But I'd love to get those conversations started. So speaking of starting, how about I start jumping into what I've got and what I want to do today. All right, how does that sound? So let's share my screen and let's see what we're looking at here. All right. All right. What we're looking at right now is a spreadsheet that I've created to help me at work. And we're going to just do a bunch of background, a bunch of what's the literary word? There's a word for this, like in movies, exposition. Yeah, we're gonna have to do some exposition, all right, so that you can kind of understand what I'm doing. I think without any, how do I say this? Without any understanding of my goals or understanding of purpose, it really makes all the other work that I'm doing really hollow. And some of the spreadsheet stuff is already really obtuse sometimes. Writing formulas that look like, I don't even want to say like a foreign language. They look like just nonsense, right? There's already so many things that can kind of like make it hard to focus. I think that if you don't have a proper sense of purpose, it just even becomes like more meaningless. So bear with me, please, as I try to introduce you to what I'm doing. So in short, I'm working at a hotel cleaning, and the hotel has many floors. First two floors are kind of like restaurant and kind of like the areas for groups and like weddings and things like that. So banquet halls, it's kind of like the word I'm looking for, and conference rooms. So that's the first two floors. Then there's the third floor, which I primarily work on, and that is it's a capsule hotel. There's different styles of capsules, and the one that is really the one that most people know when they hear capsule is kind of like the sarcophagus kind of thing. The sarcophagus actually is a real sarcophagus, like an Egyptian one, is a lot more tight than these, but most capsules are pretty tight. This one's not so tight. However, it's the size. It's exactly the size of like a, I don't know, twin or double bed or whatever it is. It's just like a bed with 3 walls around it going up to all the edges of the bed. Yeah, capsules. They're tiny, but they're affordable for businessmen who missed the last train home, and et cetera, et cetera. There are also travelers, people who are trying to travel economically. You do get more privacy in a capsule than you would at a hostel, and a hostel is the other alternative for travelers. Anyway, hotel cleaning. I clean. I usually work on the 3rd floor, and then the floors above 4 through 10, they're more of like what you consider like a style of hotel room that you recognize. Some of them would be pretty tiny for a Westerner, and others of them are pretty spacious. So there's kind of all over the place. So cleaning hotels, we got different styles. 3rd floor is the capsules, and the upper floors, they are a different style, right? So let's just changing some music and really bad at transitions. I'm getting better. All right. Did my screen go blank? I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm really an amateur. I think. Okay. Apologies, you guys. Okay, so multitasking, not so good at it. My computer's not so good at it. I'm not so good at it. We're pretty good pairing that way. Anyway, back to what's in front of us, okay? The hotel. Third floor is capsules. All the other floors above it are like kind of like the bigger rooms. Our company, our hotel, had previously been doing a lot of the management and communication on paper. And recently there's been a number of upgrades. The front desk got new equipment and new software for managing, just managing the rooms. And the cleaning staff, we've also gotten some new software. However, ours is different than their software. Theirs seems to be like a, I guess I'll just say like a web app. You know, like just kind of like a database with a web front end. Like I've noticed they're working on, pretty sure they're working on iPads. And I just noticed that they're in Safari, clicking away. And us in cleaning, we did not get a web-based app. At least it is, but it isn't. What we've got is Google Sheets. So what was previously being managed on paper, I think they were actually doing it in Google Sheets, but just printing it out. We're now sharing a Google Sheet. Okay. If you're not familiar with Google Sheets, it's like Excel, but it's online, it's shared. You do have the ability to go in and multiple people are working on something at the same time. If you've used Excel 365 and you know what that is, imagine if that worked better. I don't know. I think I know why. I started to say, I don't know why Microsoft can't make an Excel 365 that works, but it's because they want you to use the installed Excel and pay for the license for it. So that's business. But Google, who isn't really concerned with installing it, they've got more features in Google Sheets. It's a lot more powerful. It's not as powerful as Excel. If you're familiar with the installed Excel, you'll notice that Google Sheets is missing some stuff. But I digress. So Google Sheets, we share it. Okay. So what we're basically talking about, like what's being shared, is primarily coming down to what beds need to be cleaned. What beds have a person in them and which ones are vacant, right? And if you're looking at my screen, you're gonna see that that's these three right here. I can't seem to work my hands. Yeah, these are the three big ones, right? When you get upstairs, I said I work on the third floor, so upstairs is all like the full size rooms. Like I'm working on the pods. When you get upstairs, it gets a little bit more complicated, right? Because some of the stay rooms need some extra attention. On the third floor, we don't do anything with the stay rooms. We don't make the bed. We don't leave extra towels. We just leave it the way it is, right? On the upper floors, we'll do a minimal amount of cleaning in the staterooms, vacuuming and leaving amenities. But some people request clean sheets, so sometimes we have to make the bed. All of that stuff needs to be communicated for those upper floors, and that's some of the extra information that's contained in all this. There's also a little bit of like who is going where, like that sort of thing. So that people know where they're going. That's important. That's not a small detail. That's important to know, like who's going where. But that's some of the stuff that we need. Okay. So we are looking at my sheets. Let's also look at a copy of what's given to us. I just got to explain that I have a few objectives here, right? Some of my objectives fall under a umbrella of like refactoring. What is refactoring? Refactoring is a word that gets used by software developers and project managers. It basically just means take this thing that performs functions X, Y, and Z and re-engineer it so that it has the exact same functions as what it started, but better performance, right? And that could mean a number of things. That could mean that the users see it working faster, working more reliably, basically like fixing bugs, things like that. Or it could mean just that it's more organized and I guess in a way, like an analogy, if you imagine like an entertainment center with like cables going everywhere, if you go back there and you tidied the whole thing up, like you had like cable management so that everything was like it wasn't a big ugly mess, like things were tied up and possibly color coded and just like really like neat and tidy. When you get done, you'd expect that everything still worked, like you'd expect that you could still watch all the same shows and the DVD player still works, or whatever. And you wouldn't expect anything new. Like if you didn't have HBO before, you don't expect to get it now. You just tidied up, right? So that's kind of refactoring, and as I started saying, some of what I want to do will fall under the umbrella of refactoring, just kind of making things more tidy or more easier to use, or possibly even working faster. But other stuff might be new features, right? And I think that this would probably be a pattern that applies to, I don't know, so many projects, right? Where you're going to come into it and you're going to identify new features that you want to create, where you're going to identify areas where you want to declutter or speed things up or something like that. So new features and refactoring are kind of like those two big umbrellas that usually you have. So the same is true for me, right? There's going to be some things I want to do that are new and some things I want to do that are just going to kind of like tidy up and revise. Okay. So we've been looking at my sheet and we haven't really dug into it a whole lot. I want to look at what's their sheet. Okay. All right. And this was exactly what I wanted to hide. We're going to hide that. All right. There is another sheet other than this, and I didn't get it ready for this, so we might have to just kind of look at that at another time. That's fine. I'm sure that even with just what I have prepared, I'll keep us busy, so I don't have to worry too much about running out of things to do. Okay. But basically just know that there are two um, two sheets that are shared from the company with us. And one is for the third floor. We get our own sheet. And then the other one is for all of the other floors, right? It's just basically because our floor is a little bit different. But we're going to be just looking at the third floor stuff today, okay? So basically stepping through what we're provided with, we get this total of how many beds there are total, how many out, and how many are staying, okay? You guys are going to have to kind of, along with me, kind of get prepared to have some Japanese thrown in your face. Okay. So this katakana here says out, and this in English says stay. Don't ask me why it's mixed. But the areas that we do are broken up into 5 sections total. The A, B, and C are all gender, and the D and E are female only. Okay. Some female guests prefer to have a area that's female only. So that's what these are there for. Okay. And this is like a breakdown by each one. The total, how many out, how many stay. Okay. So it's kind of a little bit redundant, right? Like you're gonna notice these numbers matching those numbers. How do they even do that? They literally just link to that. I love it. I love it. It's just linked. Okay. This big red button, I don't know if it's actually hooked up, right? Let's come back to that in a minute, but I think this is supposed to perform a function like a macro. But let's come back to that later because you have no idea. Right now, you have no idea what that button's doing. It's not changing these for sure. So I said we've got 5 different areas. A, B, and C are all gender, D and E. Usually in this space right here, we might have some instructions that say who is going where, like who is working on A, B, and C, the all genders, who's working on D and E, the female, who's going to be doing some bathrooms, etc., etc. But right now, this has nothing in it. This is a copy that I've made. It is separate from like the live sheet. So any changes I make won't end up affecting other people's work because it is live, right? These sheets are shared live. And definitely there is some risk in doing that. The fact that everyone's sharing one sheet. Luckily, Google Sheets does have like an ability, like a version history that you can roll back in. However, I noticed sometimes that like it can kind of crash, maybe too much data to load in. Definitely I know that this file is really huge for whatever reason. They've used up a lot of rows and that uses up a lot of memory, and certainly doing a revision history of a file with a lot of rows is going to make everything big. So I'm not surprised that it's crashed sometimes just when I wanted to browse the version history. So even though a version history exists and the ability to roll back exists, I still just don't want to mess around with the live sheet that everyone's using. So I'm working in a copy, right? And I don't even know how many days old mine is. It's aging. That's fine. It works for what we need it to do. So, okay, so we have the summary. We've gone through that in detail. We'll come back to this red button and what it does. Let's start looking at these other tabs, right? You got these tabs along the bottom. Let's look at A. Okay, so A is laid out kind of graphically, right? We've got, let's try to zoom out. Okay, we've got A laid out in these rows like this, right? You might think, like a rational person would, that this is probably exactly how the beds are laid out at the hotel. And that's a good guess, but no, it's not. I can see pretty clearly that they've copied this style from the sheets that are used for the upstairs rooms, like floors 4 through 10, right? And if I had that sheet ready for us today, I would show you, and I could tell you that those rooms are laid out like a map, right? Like 1 is over here and 8 is over there, and et cetera, et cetera. But they did not do that with A, right? So it's kind of, I don't know how to say it, but it's kind of like a waste, I guess, a waste of energy to lay these out visually in the way that they did, because it doesn't match the map at all. The whole shape of it is different, and the placement of like where they are, it's totally different. And I can perfectly understand why they didn't take the time and effort to make it match, because it would have been a lot more work. The floor plan in the upstairs is maybe a little easier than the floor plan on our floor, but I guess all you really need to take from it is that these are laid out graphically, but it's kind of a big fat lie. They're not laid out this way. However, there's all these rows, right? And some of these are intended for us to go in and put in information. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, there's a lot of this that I can't read, but we'll get into that at a later time. But definitely one of the things that's most obvious is this check mark, right? And this check mark is here to say that something has been cleaned. And I think if I understand what's going on here, taking a guess, but when the top says out, then the next box down gets a checkbox. When the checkbox is checked, it means we've completed all the cleaning and it's ready for inspection by the front desk. And the front desk is going to come and give an inspection and either give it thumbs up or thumbs down. So that's what's going on. If there are some notes from the front desk, they will appear in here. And if we want to take some notes, we put it in down here. So yeah, in review, they tell us, even with some color coding, some conditional formatting, which beds we have to clean. We also have a checkbox telling us, we need to check that box when we're done. We check it, then the front desk reviews it and gives their input. Communication between front desk and cleaning can happen with these notes. There's front desk notes and there's cleaning notes. So yeah, so that can be really helpful. All of these other ones are going to pretty much look the same, except some different numbers, maybe some little additional information. We have these art pods and projector pods. Projector pods, they have like a small short throw video projector, like a film projector, but like video, you've seen them, I'm sure. Like any PowerPoint, that someone's given at work or at school. We have projectors so people can, in their tiny little pod, like watch a movie or YouTube or whatever. And we have these art pods that have really cool artwork. It was actually painted in there. Like I thought they would, maybe print something and adhere it to the wall, but no, actual artists came in and painted stuff, and they're really cool. These are highly, they're prioritized. Like, they really want us to get those clean before anything else. So that's why that's communicated in there, kind of like a, hey, make sure you get these clean first. C and D and E, it's all just more of the same stuff, just different numbers. Okay. So this is what we're given. There's some additional sheets, and I hid some of them. And then there's a sheet that's from me. We're working in my copy, so in my copy I added extra sheets, but just ignore extra one, and it's just all these other sheets. Okay, and this is what we're given. This is what we're starting with, right? Sometimes on a phone, this is really obnoxious to work with. It can be really slow to load in. There's a whole lot of stuff going on. I mentioned that there's 2 sheets, and I hid those because there's some information I think in there that's like not something that I should be sharing, right? So a lot of formulas are going on referencing these other sheets, and some of these formulas are pretty big and gnarly, if you can see it, and are not just gnarly because of like the Japanese characters, but just if you look at the length of it and everything, they can be kind of a bit much. But the primary ones that we all care about is this this row here, and what each one of these is doing, it's looking at the value above, which is the pod name. Every pod has its own name, just like a hotel room would. Every pod has its own name, and it's looking up that value, and based on a bunch of formula stuff, it's working out what it should put in here. This value is going to basically amount to vacant. This one is going to amount to there's someone staying, and this one is there is a person out, right? And to figure out some of that, this is where my extra sheet comes in, right? And this stuff is where I've kind of started to figure out what it is. And let's take a look at that one more time. Okay, so we have this. I will copy, and I will paste. That is that, right? You can see it's that. And this copy, stay, I think. Yep, that was stay. And the last one, this is the out. Okay. All right. I just copied and pasted so you can see that it's the same thing, right? You can see it next to each other. You know that I copied and pasted these from the other one. This is what was already in here, and this next one over here, I'm actually using a Google Translate function that's built into Google Sheets. So this can be really handy. What you should be seeing right here below is just the documentation that comes in Google Sheets. Sometimes it's going to be minimized like this, and this just shows you like real short. It shows you the syntax that you must put in some text, and then you have the option of putting in the source language and the target language. You expand that, and you get more examples, or you get examples and more details, etc., etc. And I'm sure you can learn more if you click that link. But basically, Google Translate, real handy to use it. It's just Google Translate. I'm going to highlight it and hit the tab to complete it, auto-complete it, right? And now if I just want to click on a cell, I want to, let's say, click on this one. All right. Let's see what happens if I do no parameters. Yeah, it didn't. It didn't translate anything. Okay. But if I change it from Japanese to English, out already. Okay. So in this way, Google Sheets itself can be really helpful for me. And if you just take a look around, you're going to see that I've been kind of like messing around in this a little bit. This is one table for some possible values. This is another, and to the left here is yet another. Let's dive into this in a moment, right? For starters, I'm just going to clean that up because I don't need that. And I want to get back to this, right? And I want to talk about this big gnarly formula up here. Okay, so this happens sometimes where you get a big gnarly formula. Maybe you wrote it. Okay, I'm not going to judge you, maybe, but that can happen, right? So there are things out there that can help with this, like this one, Excel Formula Beautifier. All right, this is their sample, right? But I'm going to put my own in here. Just going to paste it in. Okay, and it just instantly comes up with this. All right. So these indents kind of help me figure out the branches, right? So if it's going to do this big V lookup to come up with a value. And I can see if I go looking through this, they're going to be doing a V lookup many times, right? Like they are looking up and seeing if it's equal to this, or if it's equal to this. Three V lookups, right? Two of them, it seems like, are the same. What I'm looking at, here's what I'm looking at. This columns formula is going to return a number, right? So without even knowing what that number is, I just can see that these two match exactly. This is the name of a sheet, and then this is a range. Okay, a range, if you're not familiar, is just like many cells, continuous. So it could be an entire column, or it could be many columns, or it could be like a rectangle. That's a range. All we need to know is that they're the same. So if everything's the same, it should return the same number. We know that, I'm telling you, that columns returns a number. This one down here is different. It's a Q instead of an R. So it's going to return a different value. But it is also doing a V lookup again, the same, looking for the same value, looking in the same range. So they're very, very similar, but is returning a different value. So there's a lot of repetition, and this is a big, gnarly formula. I want to look at what I've done. Okay. So, just to recap, we are looking at this big, gnarly formula, and it is used in this row, and it's used to tell us among other values, is it out or stay or vacant, right? We can remember that these are 3 values that we looked at a lot lately. And these are our 3 big ones, right? And you can see from looking at my sheets, we have out and stay and vacant. So what am I doing? How am I doing? Am I using the same? So here, what have I done? Okay. All right. What I have done is I am referencing another sheet. Boy, how do I describe this? Because there's a lot of hidden data, right? Like there's a pretty detailed data sheet that comes over in these shared sheets, right? And let's go back to this. We know that it's looking for some values in a sheet that's hidden. Okay. But what I've done, let's see. Sorry, you guys. It's not like I just wrote this formula this morning. I'm reading it to see what the heck exactly I did. It looks like this is not the formula that's pointing to the source data. It's actually in here, right? So if I go to the tab called Out Rooms, right? Just imagine this thing called raw data A through S. Raw data is the name of the sheet, and that's kind of that's kind of the equivalent of this. This is the raw data. Okay, so we're looking at the raw data, and we're not using the VLOOKUP this time, right? We've got ifs and we've got VLOOKUPs, right? Instead, this is not going to return out or vacant or whatever. This is actually broken down so that this whole sheet is out rooms, this whole sheet is stay rooms, this whole sheet is vacant, right? So it's looking at just like one outcome, right? And we're using the query function, which has its own syntax. It's kind of similar to SQL. For most people, that probably doesn't help. But on one hand, it's annoying to need multiple syntaxes, right? Like multiple grammars in your spreadsheet, because it's not like a function with parentheses and et cetera, et cetera. It's a little bit different syntax using the query. On the other hand, though, for a person who just kind of wants to understand what's going on, it can be a little bit easier to look at this than, say, looking at these nested functions, right? Functions work great and they're kind of the basis of Excel. But sometimes it can be nice to have this different grammar and it's a little bit easier to look at it. So we're just saying select B where, and then parentheses, right? Parentheses. Q contains out or Q contains this Japanese, right? So pretty simple, right? look at this range. If the conditions are met, if it looks in column Q and it finds out or finds this other thing, then return the value B, column B. And this one, what is this one? Headers. Oh, just skip the headers, I guess. All right. Or include the headers. Yeah, okay, include the headers. All right, that's what it is. All right, and there you have it, right? It just looks at which ones should be considered out. What's the criteria for an out room? And it could be this like Roman text out, or English, or it can be this Japanese writing, right? Either one of those would be what's considered out. And you'd see that these are not continuous or contiguous. I don't know which word is correct here, but you see that there's some missing, right? But with one sheet for out, one sheet for stay, one sheet for vacant. And you're going to notice that there are some rules, like a vacant room it could contain this, or the rules get a little bit more complicated, but I think using this query makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on here. So with these parentheses, we see that, how do I say this? Boy, I wish I could like break this out and show the nesting. You can see that if just this is true, we've got a match, or if this whole thing is true, and within that it can be one or the other, but then it has to also then it must also meet this criteria. So you know what, I think it's probably going to be a matter of personal taste as far as what's easier to look at and what's easier to read. The whole query fits within these quotes, and it's kind of taking the place of all these like nested functions with ifs and multiple lookups, but that's how this is working, right? And I did mention before that these sheets can be a little bit tedious to load up, particularly load up on your phone. Most of us that are working, when we're looking at this, we are doing it on a smartphone, right? And I can't tell you the number of times I'm watching people, they're kind of like moving around because they have, if you look on the screen, they have kind of laid this thing out in 2 dimensions, right? It's kind of going all over the place. Can you see? You have to do scrolling horizontally and vertically to see everything. And in addition, it's on a smartphone. So let's see if I can show you what that's like. It seems like I lost my connection. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. There's some of the hazards of working with some of the software and hardware that I'm working with. It's kind of unreliable, so my apologies about that. Let me kind of try to get back to where I was, but software's being a little funny right now. Apologize. Okay. So far, so good. I think we might have a screen share. So what I was going to attempt to show you is if I try to show you the mobile version of this, you can really see what a pain in the butt that is. All right, I'm gonna try to zoom this. And can I even? I can't. I can move it, but I can't zoom it. Can I refresh that and get mobile? There we go. All right, so this is kind of more of the mobile experience to give you an idea of like what to do. I'm doing this with my fingertips. Thankfully, my screen is touchscreen. But you can see how lame this is, right? Like at work, like scrolling this around. You can see there's like a big difference that if I'm working at a computer and doing this, I can kind of fit this whole thing on my screen. You can see that the whole things go left to right, like in a big rectangle, and it's no surprise or it's no coincidence that the rectangle is shaped in such a way like a computer screen is, right? But the phone is usually held the top way. Of course, you can take a phone and you can rotate 9 degrees. I think, but a lot of people don't bother to. And I think that even if you turn your screen 90 degrees, I think that what the creators, I don't know who to put this on the shoulders of, so whatever. But I think what's missing, right? The caveat is that even if you take your phone and you turn it 90 degrees, like, oh, problem solved. You usually still have a bunch of extra stuff crowding the screen, right? So like if I look at this on my screen right now, I've got all this stuff at the top that is like here. This is the big bold name of the file, and here is all the tabs and stuff. So the bottom line is that even turning it sideways isn't always a great solution. I can see that this helps somewhat, right? But most people do hold their phone, you know, in a portrait kind of way. And then you have to do all this scrolling around and And basically, who needs it? So, okay, let's turn that off. Let's refresh that. And let's try to not lose my stream again. Yay. Okay. So, no, I want you to refresh that. Come on. It's still, it's stuck in the like mobile. Is this doing mobile too? No, that looks normal. How do I get this out of HTML view? Okay. All right. Okay. So bottom line, this stuff can be a lot easier to look at when it is in this format here, which is just scroll down, right? Like I can zoom way in on it on my phone, and there's no fancy conditional formatting going on. There's not a lot of rows being used in my formulas, and I kind of kept everything to a minimum. I didn't have like one formula per cell, right? This is actually going to, this one query formula is going to fill in all of these cells, all right? If we compare that to what's going on back here, it's not as though one formula is going to fill in all the cells on this row. There is a formula here, and if I go to the next cell, there is a formula here and a formula here. I don't know if you can tell, right? But I want you to look at this value here. I've highlighted E2 up in this formula up there, and you're gonna notice if I go to the cell over 1 to F, that becomes F2, and it becomes G2. What it means is that this big gnarly formula is running once for every one of these cells. And it's going to do that every time there is a change on this sheet. And changes include a lot of things. It includes checking a box, it includes like selecting something from a drop down, it includes writing something in a memo. So every time there's any kind of change, it's got to run through all the formulas in the whole sheet. So when I say the whole sheet, I really mean like the whole workbook or the whole file. So definitely we could say that that's cluttered. So me running one query and it fills in this whole column, I would say that that is an optimization, right? And then when I get over to my summary, just to kind of like continue with, I don't know how to say it, like continue with optimizations or things that I've done. To compare it to their summary, it's very similar with just a few differences, right? So out, stay, I've got the out and stay, and I'll also add one for vacant, right? And that helps me because on theirs, where is it? I believe, yeah, this value here, like total rooms. I think what this is looking at, it's just looking at the source data of how many rooms are there in A, B, C, D. Like, how do I say this? in the source data that comes over, it just counts up all of those, right? In mine, what I'm doing is I'm looking at what's out, what's stay, what's vacant, and then summing those up, right? And this has been useful for me if sometimes something is missing. In fact, that's the case right now. If I look at this, this is 32, but in fact, it should be 33. So I know that I am missing one. And that is curious to me. Where did I miss something? Okay. Boy, I want to tackle this. I don't know how I can tackle this on stream because I'm being very sensitive about not showing sensitive sheets. So although that's juicy, maybe not. This is doing exactly what I intended it for. Instead of a formula that tells me how many apods are there, this is a formula telling me if I count up all the out, all the stay, all the vacant, how many are there? And I can see it that there should be 33. So my formulas are off. This isn't the first time. I've had to do this once before. But these formulas, the query, the stay, the out, stay, the vacant, one of these queries needs to be updated. And I think I'm gonna have to do that later off stream, just so I can be like really positive that I'm not exposing data. What I could possibly do is after I've solved it, I can go back and I can share that if anyone's interested, share what the solution was. But right now, I don't know that I can really take a deep dive into what I'm missing. That's really curious. I wonder if I could at least figure out what's the missing one. So if I don't go to the raw data sheet, if I just go to, how would I do this? Let's think on the spot. We're basically looking for one missing. Okay. Copying the values, or copying those values, pasting the values without the formula, without the underlying formula. I'm going to copy again and paste transposed. So not the column. And just going to shift that over. Okay. And maybe for additional viewability, visibility is a word. Okay. You can see it's only A, right? I don't have to search any of the other ones. All right. What I'm going to do right here is match. Row minus 8. Okay. Okay. $33. I was pretty close. I got 34. All right. That's all of our rooms. We want match F9 in is it B? A, I think it's it. What am I doing? Oh, yeah. Text. Okay. Gotta make it formatted the same way. Or did you go away? Oh, this is curious because it seems like it's A1. I didn't. Okay. That's funny. Okay. Okay. So 2, 3, and then 4 is over here. Let's just see if my formula was okay. Two and 3. We're going to have to write this differently. It's a poorly constructed formula, you guys. Which do I want to do first? Do I want to fix the logic that I'm working with here? Okay. I replaced it with one match by using indirect. Okay. I'm going to grab this value out rooms and make it part of the what's the term for that? Reference? Cell reference. So this is a range actually, A through A. But part of the reference was the name of the sheet. But now I'm pulling it from the cell value using indirect. So part of this is a literal string, and part of this is this reference G8 is going to supply the name of the sheet. So look up how indirect works if you're more interested about that. And what we should be able to do is, could you please go away? Because I want to drag this. Okay. And yes, I'm aware that asshole, get out of the way. Thank you. Oh, that's weird. Why is it showing up in 2? Are you serious? I was expecting to get a number value in 1. Oh, I think I know. Yeah. Go away. How do you make this go away? I'm aware that there's an error. So much rage. Okay. There should be 1 in each column. But I don't know why I didn't copy it. That's why. I'm gonna lose my fucking shit pretty soon with these errors. How do I turn this off? Okay. It was super frustrating, all because of that little error dialogue that wouldn't go away. God damn it. I want to scream. I was getting results that I didn't expect from this, and it was all because of this one parameter of match. It's the search type. It explains what the search type means. But you can see in here, 0 finds the exact value. And if you leave that out, the default is 1, which means it's going to kind of find the nearest one. So in each case, it was trying to find the nearest to what I put in. As far as the technique goes, I did a few techniques that possibly you could learn from. Already I mentioned the indirect, which was just making use of these names to reference these different sheets, because there is a pattern to this. Like, these all have the same pattern where I want to match this value to one of these sheets. I started out trying to do an OR formula because I wanted to kind of basically just combine a bunch of results into one column, right? I was trying to like make the syntax say, did you find it in out, or did you find it in stay, or did you find it in vacant? And sometimes you want to do that. You want to put a bunch of information in one column, but it starts to make the formula really big and hard to work with. And that's kind of exactly what this is doing over here. It's saying, did you find did you find this in this VLOOKUP? If not, did you find this? Or it's actually, this is the value, the specific value. Did it match this? This is what the equals is. Did it match this? No. Well, did it match this? No. Well, and that's kind of how you end up with these big, kind of gnarly looking formulas, is by trying to have too much stuff going on in one column. So I started realizing that as I was in the middle of trying to write this OR function, and then I decided that the best way to do this would just be break it out in more columns. I would strongly recommend that to anyone writing formulas, anyone of beginner to advanced. Anyone could really benefit from just spreading out, right? Like, if your formula is getting too complicated or too long, just spread out into other columns. Just use those other columns. You can even like do stuff in steps, right? Like, you can, like, if I'm working in column G here, I can do one function that it performs some operation, and the output goes into H. And then from H, it performs some operation that goes into I. From there, it goes to J. You can do that. You can, like, imagine those columns going left to right, almost like a factory, right? And as something goes along the production line, like rolls along the belt, or goes through the process, various steps are taking place, from beginning of production to end of production. You can use that space, right? And then every step, or every cell, or every part of the way just has a small function and limited complexity, right? So I can look at it and go, at this step, what's going on? And that's especially handy because if that's the step where something is breaking, if something's going wrong at one step, then you want to know, what's going wrong, and it's easier when that one step has reduced complexity. So in my case, instead of all these like if functions or functions or logic functions to combine all this stuff, it's just spread out into 3 columns. And because of the way it's laid out left to right and top to bottom, I've had to make some use of these dollar signs. And if you're not familiar with that, that just means an absolute reference or static reference. And what that's good for is when you're copying and pasting. You saw me dragging or attempting to drag values when these error messages weren't stopping me from doing my work. When you drag something from left to right or top to bottom, Google Sheets is going to instinctively increment values that don't have the $sign, right? So G will get incremented when I go left to right, because those are the columns. It's going to go that cell reference or that column reference in this case is relative. And when I put the $sign in front of it, it becomes absolute. Same with over here. This $sign for F is absolute and 10 is relative. So what that means is, like in this case, if 10 is relative, but 8 is absolute, I would expect that when I go down 1, I'm going to expect that it's going to become F11, but still G8. And if I go down, that's exactly what happens. That's what happens when I copy that formula down. Okay. Left to right, I'm going to expect that this becomes, it stays F10 because F is absolute, but this G is going to become H8, right? And that's exactly what I see. So this is like a really great example of absolute and relative, especially because here I'm using one absolute column, and here I'm using one absolute row. And that's why, because like as I go across, I always want to be looking at A2. I never want to be looking, I never want this one in I10 looking over here at G10 or H10. I always want it looking over here at column F. Always look at column F. Same as I go below. I always want each row always looking at this top row up here. Got it? So within this table, you know, we just want to always be looking over here, right? And I will just, fuck you. God, I hate these fucking errors so much. Oh my God. I can just kind of quickly skim, but I think it's not even really necessary because I already figured out early on that A1 is my problem. I don't yet know why. I'm going to dig into that at a later time because, like I said, sensitive information, etc., etc. But this is kind of how I'm starting out doing some analysis. I think that for right now, maybe I'm going to just delete all this because this is not something that I eventually want. I am getting a little bit off track. I think that there is some use in this just as a kind of oops. This is a kind of demonstration of some techniques for troubleshooting and writing formulas and that sort of thing. However, this stuff I'm making is not stuff that I want to use on a daily basis. This would kind of almost be like software development debugging kind of things. Because ultimately, something like this over here, the thing I'm trying to highlight, that's the stuff I'm going to use on a daily basis, right? I'm going to look at this and go like, how many out rooms are there total? How many out rooms are there just in the all gender side or just in the female side? And like, what's the breakdown here? This part is being imported, like who's working in what sections. And then of course, like this stuff, the room numbers, these I find really helpful. And as I mentioned already, quicker to browse compared to this style, and we went over this already about like how to scan through that, right? It can be just a lot faster to pull this up. And when I'm looking at a room or a pod, we sometimes call them, I need to look at whether or not this bed needs to be cleaned. And oftentimes it looks like the person's checked out because they've just like left it such a mess and left the privacy screen open. But sometimes it's like they're coming back. So I can just kind of quickly look at this and scroll down, go like, I don't see them in out, and I check on stay, and like, oh, sure enough, yeah, they're a stay. So that's pretty handy. That, however, is really just copying the behavior of this, right? Like it's telling me, are they out, are they stay, or whatever. I'm copying that, but just in like a real boiled down, easy to use kind of way. But what would be something that would be, I don't know, like more helpful, right? Like more useful, right? So one thing I was thinking about that really is starting to get this into a realm of becoming more, how would I say, I don't know. Something that's getting more complex and adding more functionality. That's what I'm looking for. Getting to an area of more functionality, but also being a little more complex in how it works. Would be if we took some of these that need to be out and started looking at like what are the steps to complete it. So it's kind of like, is the area cleaned out? I'm just gonna say cleaned out. Cleaned out. Has linen. Has linens. Pillows and duvet. Complete. Vanity bag vacuumed. All right, these are all of the steps that we go through, and I think it's possible that you could even break out some of this. Some people deliver the linen like parts. How do I say this? There's 3 pieces of linen that go out, 4 if you want to count 2 pillowcases separately, but 3 distinct types of linen, and some people come out with 2 and then another one later. These 2 maybe could be combined. Maybe there could be another step for some of the additional cleaning that goes in, like wiping down. There's a potential to break out some of these into subtasks or combine them into kind of like larger tasks or macro tasks. I don't know what's the right word to use for that, but there's definitely like many steps to completing a bed, and unfortunately the spreadsheet that we're provided with only gives us this checkbox, right? And the 2 problems that I see with the checkbox, one is the obvious thing that it's not broken out into many steps, and as a result, that doesn't give a lot of visibility to our team. most of these boxes won't be checked until the end of the day, because it's not until it's at the very end, everything is checked, that we say, okay, this is ready for inspection. Um, having these subtasks would be good visibility within our department, or even from outside the department looking in, to see how far along we are. So that's one thing. Another thing is, I'm really not so thrilled with the whole idea that everyone's sharing one sheet and everyone's like kind of making changes to settings and the requirement of the version history. So the way that I would do this, I think that the best way to do this is that a person submits an action, and then some kind of separate display shows what's happened, right? So this is an idea that's kind of complex, so I'm going to try to show this in the best way that I can. Okay, so that's back to its original. Good. Okay. All right. What we want to kind of string together a few pieces of information. So we want to have a timestamp that some time occurred. And putting that first, but maybe that should be last in the way that I explain this. Let's start with a staff member. Set how do I say this? Status of job. No. Set status of task to status at timestamp. Oops. So look at this from left to right, like you read a sentence. Staff member, that's like going to be a name. Set status of task to status at timestamp. Write this down. Set status of task. So basically every one of these tasks is going to be kind of given a name, and the name and the description could kind of be synonymous, or it doesn't have to be, but they could be cleaned out, has linens. That could be the name, but it's also how you describe it. But it sets the status of this task to what's the status at some time. At some time is probably the easiest to understand, or at least equivalent to the staff member part. The who, this is who, and this is when. And all of this, what's all of this right here. Sorry, my keyboard skills, I thought they were better than they are, but I'm learning I'm just a dummy. Um, all of this is the what, right? Um, this part is the what, right? So there's a pairing that goes on, right? And some of you more computer and programming inclined would kind of look at it as a field and a value, right? Like foo equals bar, Okay, so say something like this: A01, A02. Why is it 3? A03. The keyboard. It's not me. It's the keyboard. They're moving the keys around. Somebody like not started. Sure. Oops. Okay, well, fine. You get an extra row. All right. If I do like cleaned out is not started. All right. That's cleaned out. Cleaned out is not started, right? But I want to change cleaned out to in progress. All right. So maybe just gonna move this. Sure. Right there. Maybe Brian set status of cleaned out to in progress at there we go. All right. And so what this would do is change this. Okay. All right. So why is this so complicated, right? That's the question that maybe is on your mind. Let me just kind of sneak this out of here a little bit. Just to not distract us so much. Okay. So what we end up with, right, is one table over here and one table over here, right? Why are the two tables? Why not just go in here and as I'm working, just say finished and change it over here. And the reason for that is that it all ends up coming down to needing the version history and all of this junk that's look at this. Look at this. This is I don't like this. This is what it comes down to. I don't want to have to manage things in this way using the Google Sheets version history. This is not good. Can I get out of here? Yep. That's great. Hopefully everything else is intact. Okay. So I probably couldn't have given a better demonstration of why I don't want to rely too heavily on the version history of uh, of Google Sheets. It'd be nice to really have this kind of like under my own control. So what we have here is that this table is basically our version history, right? Is that um, this table only ever needs to collect data going downward, right? So if I were to say, set that to cleaned out, set it to, well, let's say we just get rid of these borders for right now. Yeah. Okay. Let's say I want to set it back to not started. Like it's kind of an undo or whatever. I can do this. I can do this as many times as I want to. I can just keep, oops. I can just keep saying, oh, I'm starting it. And just kidding, I didn't start it. And it only ever has to grow downward, right? And we're going to expect that the timestamps are like in chronological order. Because I'm using a formula like right now, these kind of don't count because they're always matching, they're always the same. So just replace in your mind this with an accurate timestamp and not all at this very moment. Fact do is there we go. Okay. But that's the goal here, right? So this is a visualization, right? Like we would go down from top to bottom with the room numbers, and left to right with the values of the task. Now, has anybody recognized the thing that I missed because I left a part out of the table, and it's the room number? So I think the best part, as a sentence, how would I put that? Status. I'm trying to figure out in English how I would fit this in here. Set status. Set status of. This is the hardest thing. Where do I shoehorn this into this sentence? If I've been away from English speakers for so long that I don't know how to speak English anymore, or was I never that good at it to begin with? Set status of. I'm just gonna. That was perfect. There we go. So now this looks like I started cleaning A1, but then I set A1 back to not started. Then I started cleaning A3 and then set it back to not started. All right, just ignore timestamps for right now. So this is something that is starting to look like how so many apps and web apps actually work under the hood, right? Oftentimes, this kind of data is being collected in a database software, and then some of the visualizations of it take shape in many different ways. Sometimes it's a part of the database software. Other times it's another application that has a front end that the user sees and also has a back end that's connecting out to the database. And that kind of arrangement where one application is just responsible for formatting data, showing to the user, and connecting back to the database, a separate piece of software, like one software for just storing data and returning it on demand, and also accepting changes and edits and all that sort of thing. One part is just data. One part is just concerned with data, and another part is concerned with the user end. That's getting into the area of web apps and most applications that you use on the web are going to be that kind of arrangement, right? So let's look at a quick example of one way that we could do this, right? And one way we can do this is create a form. This is just built right into Google Drive and Google Sheets. The way this is designed, you can tell from the, how do I say it? Some of the user interface that this was meant for questionnaires, right? And you can see because they say questions and responses, they're going to give you a way to kind of do some analysis of the responses. This is very much like a Survey Monkey kind of thing. It's modeled a little bit differently than how we are thinking about this. Like we are thinking about keeping track of the state of something. That's how we're using it. But this is thinking about like you distribute this out to many different people and collect all their answers and aggregate it and start to look for a trend and so forth. But we could use the technology however we want, or at the very least get some ideas from how this works. So I'm just going to say, I don't know, form description, test drive of Google Forms. Right. All right. First question is going to be multiple choice. What we do, short answer. Here I'm going to say staff member name. Let's add another question. And what's better, multiple choice or drop down? It's probably a really boring part. I'm bored, so imagine you're bored. Did you know that a YouTube video Did you know that a YouTube video about spreadsheets was going to be boring? Did you think it was going to be really fun to watch? I'm sorry to be the one who had to ruin it for you. What is this? This is the task. But you know what? Before I get to that, I want to insert. Oh, can I duplicate this? Yeah, room number. I'm gonna just take. Okay, and then I guess the next one I could do multiple options. We're gonna find out which one's easier. Not started, in progress, completed, can't complete. And you've got the who, you've got the where. The when is going to be handled for us automatically. And then the what we've got it between these two drop downs and task status. All right. Can we finish this? Send. What? Guess that's it. Oh, let's preview this. All right, Brian, doing A01, and I'm going to clean it out, and I'm setting the status to in progress. All right. Did anything actually get sent? No, I don't think so, because I don't think it completed this yet. Oh, responses. Oh, how nice. It's very, very much obvious it's meant for something different. Collect email addresses. No, I don't need all of that, but let's just do send. No, I don't want to send this out. Um, I want to know. That's where we put it. I was looking for you. I've been looking for you. Form response sheet. It's hunting all over. I knew that there should be a sheet. All right. And so if we look at this, this looks suspiciously like this table that I put together. Yeah. Um, okay. And what we could do is we could, in another sheet, create a table like this. And then it becomes a question of do we have this, like these values? Do we put formulas in there? Because um, there'd be formulas to look at this and determine what is the latest status. Or could we alternatively have like a script that upon upon submitting the uh, upon submitting the form, like when a new form is submitted, it could run a script that then updates all of these, right? And the difference is that a formula is probably going to be easier for a user to go in and make edits to than the script would be. You know, the script might be a little bit more, let's just say, intimidating, right? So, but maybe we don't really want everyone going in and making changes to it. So maybe the usability is not a big deal. Perhaps formulas could be written, at least in part. Like if I have something like what we're looking at right now, we have just rooms A1 through 4. It probably wouldn't be so bad to do this many cells with formulas because we're looking at on the order of like 16, 20 cells, something like that. And that's not a lot, right? Now, if you stretch it out to the whole thing, and if you add extra columns or whatever, it gets bigger and bigger to the point where like you probably don't want every single cell to have its own formula. But formulas are really not so bad for prototyping. And in my own experience, I've done things like that, and it did work. But it definitely was not something that was meant to last. Even Excel, with the computer I had at the time and Excel installed, it can still get pretty bloated and slow down, and you have to like wait for computations to happen. So doing everything with formulas in each cell, kind of referring to how they did things here. This is really not bad for a prototype, or I want to say it's not a bad first approach. It's not a bad place to start because many programming languages, many styles, um, can be built for doing things quickly, right? And I think that that's a good. I think that this way of doing it, just write a formula, have it work. Do something even if it's wrong. Just get something started. I think that's a good place to start. But it may be worthwhile to look into something like I described, where uh, the form response comes in, and upon coming in, it triggers a script, and the script is going to go through this table from start to finish, and it's going to update all the values. And then when the script is done, these values don't get updated again. They're going to be static values, exactly like what you're looking at right now. Like finished is literally finished. It's not it's not a formula. It's not looking at something else, but it's just a static value that was placed in there by a script. And then no matter what else you do in the rest of the sheet, it never has to recalculate that cell again until another form comes in. And I would probably say that that is the better way to go for the future, right? So what I'm getting at is start with formulas for just a small portion, figure out how you want to work, and then go back and um, refactor, need some coffee, refactor the work that you did. In this case, if you've got like a prototype that's just a small part, you can refactor that part and then like expand it over like the entire thing. So it could be A1 all the way through E7 or whatever it is. So, so this is kind of where I'm at. To be honest, no one's asked for this. I've been kind of doing all this work by myself, right? And I am interested in kind of spreading out a little bit to the people in my group. And I've just been kind of cautious about how I want to do it. I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I don't want to get people excited for things I can't deliver on. I also want to try to make this something that people care about, but I also know that people will either care about this or they won't. So I'm really trying to like find this balance between what how do I say this? What can I make? What can I make that I can show someone else and it'll be useful? And if I want to know what someone would find useful, I should just ask them, right? But then it's kind of like you've touched them, you've changed them already by asking, and I really would like the first impression to be they see something that I've made instead of my first impression being I ask them what they want, right? So I am kind of telling myself, don't ask, like show something. And that means that it's up to me to decide like what's useful. And I'm trying to decide. This has been like the idea that I've had so far, as far as like, I'd like to track the certain steps along the way of completion. And in considering that, that's where I kind of considered this separation, the separation between what do we do and how do we visualize it, right? There's a name for this software approach. MVC is a common name for it, but you're going to hear this a lot, like the separation of like the logic or the design from, how do you say it? The business logic separated from like the user interface, or the MVC refers to model viewer controller, right? And there's like in that design paradigm, there's three different parts. The model is like the data, the viewer is like the user interface, and the controller is like another part of the interface. gets confusing. But it essentially boils down to what we're looking at on my screen right here, this kind of separation. Um, Now there's one more thing that I considered getting into, and boy, I'm not sure if I want to do this again because the last time I tried to do this, it caused my streaming software to crash. But I'm going to cross my fingers. I'm going to try to do this again, and I really hope it doesn't crash. Okay. So far, so good. Okay, great, great. This makes me happy. It's working well. Okay. So what did I do previously? I set A1 to in progress. Okay. I'm gonna set it back to not started. Brian A1 cleaned out. Let's set back to not started. Okay. I'm gonna submit this. Okay. I'm gonna take a look back over here. Okay, great. There's another one for me. It's set back to not started. Real good, right? It's still looking like this, right? This was the quick and dirty sketch. I kind of sketched this out, right? And now we actually have a very similar table being generated by the forms over here, right? What is this junk on the right, you might be asking? Well, let's start by kind of getting this console out of here. Can I hide console drawer? Yep. Okay. And then, is it this one? Post. Where is my data? Here it is. There sure is. There sure is a lot of stuff going on. Okay. But here we kind of have the data. Brian, A1 cleaned out, not started, right? Those were the things that appeared in here, right? It's this stuff. Brian cleaned out, not started, A1, and here, okay. So what we're doing is we're kind of just examining the network traffic, right? Like what information was sent from my browser, my web browser. What was sent to Google? This is what we're looking at. And one way to do this would be, can I copy this? Copy this. Curl. Let's see if we can do this. Let's I don't think should be signed in as Datastree. Oh, come on. I am struggling with my login right now. Logged in to the wrong account. Sorry. Almost there. Promise. Pinky swear. I had it and I lost it. Nope. I'm so sorry. Let's do this. Promise that I'm trying to do my best. Copy as curl. Okay. Do I have curl? It's a whole lot of stuff. There's like cookie information and oh my god, so much stuff. Let's see if this even works. It's there. You guys, it's there. There's a different timestamp. It's like 5 minutes later. But it came over with all of that. Can we clean it up? Actually, can we do, oh Lord, bash, no, what is it? What is it? What is it called? What is it called? Oh my God. I used to use this all the time. Explain shell. Explain shell. It took a minute. Explain. Can you? It's too much. It's just too much for it. Okay. Can we explain this? Okay. So we have curl followed by the name of where it's going. We have the H command. Each one of these is a header. Setting a bunch of headers on this. I kind of just take it for face value what all these are, but it's possible that a lot of these could be skipped, but that would only be determined through testing. So what I'm trying to say is you could experiment with taking out some of these headers and see if it still works. Do you still need this cookie? Do you still need this setting? You know, like you could experiment and see if you can take out any of that. I'm trying to tell if this is all one big thing, if this is all part of the cookie. Because the cookie has this format that's like something equals something and then semicolon space, and then something equals something semicolon space. It looks like that whole thing is the cookie. And then finally we have the data. This data, we have a compressed part too. I think compressed could be left out. Data part we absolutely cannot leave out because that corresponds. You can't see my screen. I'm so sorry. I just realized that I've been discussing something that you can't see. Hang on. What I've been discussing is, I'm so sorry about that, by the way. The output, or not the output, it was when I went here and did copy is curl, and that gave me a big long command that I executed way up here at the top. Can't see it, but I ran a command. And it was big and long and gnarly, and it still is big and long and gnarly. This is it. I added some new lines in here so you can kind of see it a little bit. This is what I was narrating, but you couldn't see my screen because I was in a different window. I'm sorry. But I have added some new lines in here that kind of help visualize this a little bit. The command is curl, and the first parameter to it is just the string, which is just what destination for the rest of the command, or the rest of the request. I would say this is a request. It's a request to requesting the docs.google.com server to accept some data. And the data is down here at the bottom where the data parameter is. And all of it is right in here. And this highlighted portion corresponds to down here. We have the form data, pardon me, the form data, and we looked at this before. There, I think now it's all on screen. We looked at this before. We could see how the things I submitted were all down here. And we discussed how that part of the traffic that we observed, we did it through the Google Forms website. We observed this part in the developer tools. We observed that part, and that matched with the data that came over, right? So now what we've done is we have copied out of here the command to repeat this, and we submitted it here at the command line. This is just running like a Unix command line. We're able to run a command. That command that we run looks like this. And when we ran it already. It repeated the form submission exactly how we wanted it to. So now I think what we can do is we can copy this again. It looks ugly, but it's fine. Let's try changing this to, oh, what's a funny name? Henry. I don't know why Henry is in my mind. To plus signs are spaces, in case you didn't know. And let's change this to B1. All right. Copy this. Paste as plain text. Let's submit. And let's look. Oh, look. Henry has set test cleaned out in progress of B01. So what this shows us is that it is possible to have some kind of interaction with the spreadsheet other than directly through the interface that they provide us with. In fact, I feel like I might get lucky, and I want to see if we could I want to see if we could try to make our own web form. I don't know if it'll work, but I want to try. So let's start with me just grabbing just this. Okay. And here we're going to have, oops, we're going to have form action. No. Method equals post action equals I don't need the double quotes. Let's go back. Let's just undo because this is getting messy. Form, tab, action. Boy, if I thought I was fighting against error messages in Sheets, that it's also challenging fighting with this. All right, what do we need to have? Show me what do I need to have? Can I skip any of these? Let's try just the basics. Let's just see what we get. We want I should have. If you don't already see it, I'm taking this text and moving it out of this bottom part and pasting it into the default values. I could still come in here and make this Henry if I wanted to. The default is going to be Brian. And of course, I'm going to need this. This is going to be the name. All right. And I've done like a bare minimum, right? I've started with the maximum. I've taken the curl command that they gave us, which had every bit of detail. If you remember, it was extremely detailed, right? Including cookies and et cetera, et cetera. Right now, I'm kind of looking at the form data they're sending, and it's saying maybe I can try skipping some of this stuff like FVV, draft response, page history. I'm going to try skipping that and just see what happens. I just want to see what happens. I'm skipping the cookies. I'm skipping a bunch of stuff. All right, but I just want to find out what happens. Okay. And submit. All right. All right. If I'm not mistaken, that should be everything. So let's try submitting this. Your response has been recorded. Let's pop over here and sure shit, there it is. All right. Guys, I'm not gonna even lie to you. I have I don't know, I've been working with Google stuff recently. I expected it to be so much harder than this. I expected that a lot more of this gnarly junk was going to be required. I was expecting I might have to set some cookies. I might have to set some headers. I just expected that more of this junk would be required. Even just these other fields that I don't understand. But in fact, if we take a look at this HTML source text, it's really, really simple. And it still was able to submit. And we got the we got it right here. And we're not limited to what's hard coded in here, right? So like if I just popping this out because then it's easier to refresh. If I just want to make this Terrence, I don't know how you spell Terrence. Set BO1. Okay, so we're not limited to what values we start with in here. We can change it around. These put them in, of course, for the default value. But let's can I refresh? Okay. But this is just a really super simple demonstration of what's possible. Name task. Something like that. I'm probably beating a dead horse at this point, but the point is that it would be real possible for someone to create their own web app that actually is using Google Spreadsheets as a backend, like as a database, right? And then the next step would be to build was basically the interface, right? Um, how do you want to read? How do you want to read this source data and compose it into a visualization? And there's so many ways. I mean, this table that we have is just one way to visualize it, but I'm sure that there's even visualizations that are possible that are web-based visualizations. So what I'm saying is, um, it's not just that I can take this data within Sheets and on another worksheet, um, create this table of cells. But I could potentially even build another web page that is reading it. That's going to get a little bit more complex. I don't think not I don't think, I know I'm not ready to dig into it on this recording. But we've kind of got the groundwork laid for that, right? So if I wanted to start on that, this really kind of introduces, I don't know, some of the fundamentals of like how this is possible, right? So it's pretty interesting. I don't know. I think it's pretty interesting that this table can be set up fairly easily using the Google Sheets interface, or Google Forms interface, I should say. I can go in here and I can design how I want the form to work. And in fact, if I wanted to put in some requirements or something like that, but frankly, I don't know how much of that goes away once we start to make our own interface for it. So yeah, that would be a matter of experimentation to find out if something could be rejected because of some patterns or something were ignored. I don't really know yet. I have to experiment more with this, but I do think it's really cool that a table like this can be created real easily using Google Forms, and then very easily I can make my own form and submit data to the Google Forms server, and it takes it. It didn't complain at all. It just took it right in there. So that's been pretty cool. And yeah, I am interested in the future taking this further, see where we can go with making a web app that's backed by Google Sheets. Yeah, this is an area that interests me. I do want to bring it back into the realm of how is this useful, right? So I have to potentially spend a little bit more time on the user experience, user interface design part of this, and really kind of think about like, how will I use this, right? And I have some thoughts about that. I want to collect them a little more. Um, this recording is already rambly enough without getting more rambly into the world of like possible user interface design. So I don't know if I want to do some sketches. I don't really know how I do it. I want to go through a little bit more brainstorming, I think, privately. Um, I really want to, with this kind of work in general, I really want to try to do more of my work on camera. Um, I think that there is a value in kind of doing things out in the open, in showing that like mistakes get made and things happen. Um, I think sometimes it's good for me. Maybe no one else is interested in the things that I record, but maybe for me, it's good to see what some of my strengths are, see what some of my weaknesses are, and convert that into corrections that I can make going forward. But at the same time too, like sometimes there's just like too much camera time. So I'm trying to strike the right balance between how much stuff I do on camera and how much stuff I can do with the camera off. So I'll continue working on the recipe and see what works. But yeah, I do feel right now, I do kind of feel like I'm kind of uh coming up on like being ready to take a break. Um and I'm feeling like I've gotten through a lot of stuff as far as like introducing Google Sheets. I have definitely not dived into everything I can do with Google Sheets. There's still a lot more, but I always want to uh, leave some behind. I don't know how to say this, but like there should probably never be a time where I've finished everything there is to do. There's always more to do, and that's fine with me. If I've finished something that satisfies me, and in this case, what I've done is I've done an introduction to um, how these sheets fit into our business and what we do at the hotel, and then kind of dived into kind of like what exists currently with the sheets provided by the hotel. What have I done in a kind of like refactoring a bit and making things easier for me to read. I've also kind of pointed out that like sometimes my formulas of queries aren't perfect, and I have to do some troubleshooting to repair those. And so that one I'm going to repair this one later and figure out what was wrong with one of these queries. Why is it that none of these queries, outrooms, stay rooms, and vacant rooms, none of them picked up A01? What's the problem there? And then after I talked about what's been done already, I started to dig in like to what could be done, and I was pretty happy with the outcome of creating this form that really is representative of what I kind of modeled here, my little quick mock-up. It really does match that, and I'm really happy with the fact that with just like a small amount of HTML, I've been able to submit form requests here that show up. So all in all, pretty good for a day's work. And yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue thinking about what it is that I would use, right? Like, how can I scratch my own itch? What can I do that's actually useful to me, actually I care about? And hopefully some of my coworkers care about the same thing, that they might see what I'm using and go like, wow, can I get that too? Um, that would be great. That would be nice. But yeah, I think that's what I'm going to work on. I'm also going to check back with the Facebook community that I'm a part of. I've shared a link to the stream, and I'm interested to see if any of those members of the group are interested about spreadsheets, interested about any of the topics that I discussed here, have any questions, or have their own spreadsheets or their own things that they have been working on. Because that might be a possible project for the future. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to check with them if that's kind of like a thing, if that's um, something that they're doing. So, or that they're interested in, I should say. So, okay, that's going to be it for me today. I'm going to sign on out of here, and it has been great hanging with you all. So, all right, thanks you guys. I'm outie. Bye-bye.